Here's the part nobody talks about. Michael Jackson wasn't just the best-selling pop artist on Earth. He was also one of the most prolific celebrity video game collaborators of his generation, with his fingerprints on roughly 9 different titles across 3 decades. We're talking arcade beat-em-ups, platformers, rhythm games, a secret unlockable boxer, a Sonic the Hedgehog controversy that took almost 30 years to confirm, and a full-blown dance title that dropped a year after his death. Today we're walking through every single Michael Jackson game ever released, in order from the 1988 pitch meeting that started it all to the posthumous 2010 send-off. Buckle up, because this timeline gets stranger the further you go. The story begins in 1988. Michael had just released the Moonwalker film, that surreal anti-gravity gangster musical built around the Smooth Criminal video, and was looking for ways to extend the project into new media. According to the Wikipedia entry on Michael Jackson's Moonwalker, that year he personally contacted Sega about developing a video game that would capture his persona. Sega, a company that had been aggressively courting celebrity tie-ins to compete with Nintendo, said yes almost immediately. What followed was roughly 2 years of co-development, where Jackson himself worked alongside Sega's game designers in Japan, helping shape the character, the combat moves, and the soundtrack choices. That meeting is the seed from which every future Jackson video game grew. Game 1, Moonwalker, Home Computers 1989. The first title out the gate wasn't actually the Sega arcade version. It was a separate release handled by British publisher US Gold for home computers including the ZX Spectrum, Amstrad CPC, Commodore 64, and Atari ST. US Gold had secured the rights independently, and their version played nothing like what Sega was building. It was a mix of maze exploration and shooter gameplay, with Jackson navigating environments taken loosely from the Moonwalker film while synthesized chiptune versions of his hits played in the background. Reviewers at the time were mixed. Your Sinclair compared the ZX Spectrum edition to Gauntlet and Operation Wolf, describing it as well-animated and a surprising amount of fun. Others found the controls stiff and the music tinny. Either way, it was the world's first playable Michael Jackson experience, and it set the template for everything that followed. Game 2. Michael Jackson's Moonwalker Arcade, Sega 1990. This is the one most retro gamers remember. Released on July 17, 1990. In North America and August 25, 1990 in Japan, the Sega arcade cabinet ran on the company's System 18 hardware and featured an isometric beat-em-up perspective. Up to 3 people could play simultaneously, each controlling a differently colored Michael. White suit for player 1, red for player 2, black for player 3. Gameplay centered on navigating crime-ridden streets, rescuing kidnapped children, and fighting through waves of Mr. Big's henchmen using magic-enhanced dance attacks. Jackson's signature move, called Dance Magic, forced every on-screen enemy to start dancing with him before collapsing, and players could trigger choreography pulled directly from Smooth Criminal, Beat It, and Billie Jean. A prototype was demonstrated at Mexico's American Amusement Machine Association exhibition in early July 1990, and by September the cabinet had become the top-grossing new video game on the Replay arcade charts in North America. Game 3. Michael Jackson's Moonwalker console version, Sega Genesis/Mega Drive, 1990. Released on August 24, 1990, just a month after the arcade cabinet hit Japan, the home console port was a completely different game despite sharing the same title. Built as a side-scrolling platformer in the style of Shinobi, this version put Michael through levels structured like Super Mario Bros., with 3 substages per zone. The soundtrack included chiptune covers of Smooth Criminal, Beat It, Another Part of Me, Billie Jean, and Bad. Notably absent was Thriller, generally believed to have been excluded because Rod Temperton, not Jackson, wrote the song, meaning royalties would have gone to an outside party. A curious workaround existed. The NTSC-J Japanese Mega Drive release did include a hidden Thriller cue under specific conditions, making that cartridge a collector's item today. The console port also featured Bubbles the chimpanzee as a helper character, appearing on Michael's shoulder at the end of each level to guide the player toward the boss fight. The final stage transformed Michael into a spaceship for a first-person flight battle against Mr. Big, a genuinely bizarre finale that sticks in the memory of anyone who played it. Versions also appeared on the Sega Master System and Game Gear. There was also reportedly an unreleased sequel. Documents surfaced in 2023 through a social media post by Rapiaku Tsurumi, the original planner of the Moonwalker arcade version, referencing a project titled Michael Jackson's Dangerous for the Sega CD accessory. Whether it was meant as a direct follow-up or a standalone game is still unclear, but the paperwork confirms Sega had more Jackson titles in the pipeline that never made it to store shelves. Game 4. Michael Jackson and Scramble Training, 1993. This one is the weirdest entry on the list, and most fans don't even know it exists. Released exclusively for arcades in 1993, Scramble Training ran on Sega's AS1 motion simulator cabinet, a hydraulic theater-style ride that moved up to 8 players through a pre-rendered 3D interactive film. Jackson himself appeared in live-action full-motion video sequences filmed for the game, providing voice acting and acting as the player's guide through a space-themed mission. Portions of his music served as the soundtrack. Because the AS1 cabinet was massive, expensive, and mostly installed at Sega theme parks and high-end arcades in Japan, very few Western fans ever encountered it in person. Footage is scarce even today, which makes Scramble Training the rarest Michael Jackson gaming artifact ever produced. Game 5. Sonic the Hedgehog 3, 1994. The Great Mystery. This entry isn't technically branded as a Michael Jackson game, but it belongs on the list because of decades of speculation about his involvement. Sonic 3 launched on February 2, 1994, for the Sega Genesis, and almost immediately, rumors began circulating that Jackson had contributed to the soundtrack. Sega publicly denied it for years, and various reports speculated that Jackson had left the project following the 1993 child sexual abuse accusations, or that he was dissatisfied with the Genesis sound chip's audio quality compared to the Super Nintendo. The truth finally came out on June 23, 2022, when former Sonic team leader Yuji Naka confirmed via social media that Michael's contributions had in fact remained in the final released version of the game. He just was never officially credited. That means anyone who played Sonic 3 between 1994 and today has been listening to uncredited Michael Jackson compositions without knowing it. Game 6. Space Channel 5, 1999, Dreamcast. This is where the story takes a completely unexpected turn. Developed by Sega's United Game Artists Studio under creative director Tetsuya Mizuguchi, Space Channel 5 was a rhythm game starring Olala, a 25th century TV reporter dancing her way through alien invasions to rescue hostages. According to Mizuguchi's own account published in the May 2007 issue of Electronic Gaming Monthly, the team was roughly 60 to 70% finished with development when Jackson personally reached out asking to be in the game. Mizuguchi, who didn't immediately recognize the name on the first phone call, eventually agreed and programmed Michael into the final act as a fictional character called Space Michael, complete with his real likeness, voice, and dance moves. The cameo was originally meant as a one-time appearance near the end of the game, but it became one of the title's most beloved sequences. Space Channel 5 launched first in Japan in December 1999 and later hit international markets on Dreamcast and PlayStation 2. Game 7. Ready 2 Rumble Boxing, Round 2, 2000. Yes, really. Michael appeared as a secret unlockable character in the sequel to Midway's arcade-style boxing franchise, released for Dreamcast, PlayStation 2, Game Boy Color, and Nintendo 64. To access him, players had to complete specific in-game requirements, and once unlocked, they could pit a cartoonishly rendered Michael Jackson into boxing matches against the roster's other oversized fighters. The cameo was reportedly arranged through direct negotiation with Jackson's team and became one of the most surprising celebrity gaming appearances of the early 2000s. It has the distinction of being the only Michael Jackson video game appearance where he literally punches people in the face. Game 8, Space Channel 5, Part 2, 2002. Following the positive reception of Jackson's cameo in the first Space Channel 5, Mizuguchi brought him back with a significantly expanded role in the sequel. In Part 2, Space Michael becomes the new head of the Channel 5 broadcasting station, only to be kidnapped by the villain Purge and his rhythm rogues partway through the game. Ulala eventually rescues him in a dedicated level built around several of Michael's signature dance moves, the moonwalk, the crotch grab, the spin. He then joins her as a playable partner for the final confrontation. Space Channel 5, Part 2 released on Dreamcast and PlayStation 2 in 2002, and remains the most substantial interactive performance Jackson ever gave in a video game, with original voice work and fully motion-captured choreography. Fans of both franchises still rank the sequel as one of the most creative celebrity in-game collaborations ever pulled off. Game 9, Michael Jackson, The Experience, 2010. The final official Jackson video game, and the only one released after his death, arrived on November 23, 2010, courtesy of Ubisoft and Triumph International, operating as a subsidiary of the Michael Jackson Company LLC. The experience was a full-blown music and dance title built around Jackson's catalog, with players motion tracking their way through choreographed routines for songs like Billie Jean, Beat It, Thriller, Bad, Smooth Criminal, Black or White, and Rock With You. It launched initially on Nintendo Wii, Nintendo DS, and PlayStation Portable, and was later ported to Xbox 360 Kinect, PlayStation 3 Move, PlayStation Vita, and iOS. Ubisoft marketed the title aggressively as a tribute to Jackson's legacy, and it became one of the biggest music game releases of that holiday season, selling over 3 million copies across platforms. For many younger fans who had never seen Jackson perform live, the experience was their first chance to physically step into his choreography and attempt to mimic the moves themselves. There was also a 10th planned project worth mentioning. Planet Michael, announced in 2010 by a company called C Virtual Worlds. The idea was ambitious, a massively multiplayer online universe built entirely around Jackson's music, imagery, and themes, where fans could create avatars and explore digital spaces inspired by his albums and tours. Press coverage at the time treated it as a major announcement, but the project quietly collapsed during development and never fully launched in any form accessible to the public. It remains a fascinating what-if in the Michael Jackson gaming timeline, the ghost of a title that might have redefined celebrity virtual worlds if the money and technology had held together. Stepping back, the full arc tells you something important about how Jackson approached new media. When he entered that first Sega meeting in 1988, video games were still considered a secondary entertainment medium, something kids played and adults ignored. Michael saw the potential years before most of his peers did. He personally pushed to be in these projects. He made unsolicited phone calls to Japanese development studios. He agreed to motion capture sessions, voice acting, and licensing deals that most artists of his stature would have viewed as beneath them. The result is a body of interactive work that stretches from primitive isometric arcade cabinets to Kinect-powered dance simulators, spanning 22 years of gaming history and touching nearly every major platform of the era. The Moonwalker games have been inducted into various greatest of all time lists by outlets including GameSpot, while simultaneously appearing on Game Informer's 2007 list of the worst licensed game concepts ever, which tells you everything about how polarizing these titles were and still are. Space Channel 5. Part 2 is widely regarded as an underrated rhythm classic. Sonic 3's musical legacy finally got its Jackson credit after nearly 30 years of rumors, and the experience became the final chapter in a catalog that began with a 1988 phone call and ended on a Wii remote 2 decades later. So the next time somebody tells you Michael Jackson was just a musician, remember this: the man helped design 9 video games, cameoed as a character in a 25th century intergalactic dance simulator, anonymously composed Sonic the Hedgehog music, punched opponents in a cartoon boxing ring, and released a posthumous motion-controlled dance title that sold millions of copies across 5 different platforms. That's not just a pop career, that's an entire second legacy hiding inside the first one.